All right, sir, if you'll come right around over here for me. And you can adjust that microphone as need be, and be sure and speak directly into it and loudly so we can all hear you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Corey.
Yes, Your Honor. State your name for the record.
Andrew Williams,
In what city and county do you reside?
Jacksonville, Duval County.
Let me take your attention back to November of 2012. What was your occupation at that time?
I was a cabinet installer,
Where were you living?
Jacksonville, Florida.
With whom were you living?
My wife,
Let me take your attention more specifically to Friday evening of November 23rd, 2012, around 1900 hours, around 7 o'clock p.m. What were you and Mrs. Williams doing beginning around that time?
we were going to take two youth that go to our church on a date.
On a date?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you
To dinner.
chaperoning?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you going to eat before going out on that date?
Yes, ma'am.
To which restaurant were you heading prior to going? Where else were you going to go that evening?
We're going to go to the Avenues Mall.
Okay, and were you planning something after dinner?
Movie. We're going to go see a movie.
To which restaurant were you heading prior to the movie?
We weren't sure. We kind of picked the Avenues Mall because we couldn't figure it out.
Were you driving your vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And was your wife with you at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
In which seat of the car was she sitting?
Passenger.
Who else was with you in the car?
The two teenagers.
Did you at some point prior to around 7:30 approach the intersection of Bay Meadows and Southside Boulevard?
Yes, ma'am.
Which way would you have approached that intersection?
We would have been heading, I believe it's west on Bay Meadows and turned left to go onto Southside to go down to the mall.
That would be heading south at that point.
Yes, ma'am.
correct? In which left-hand turn lane were you when you were waiting for the light to go south on Southside Boulevard?
The one closest to the Walgreens, there's two lanes. It would be the one in the left lane.
The inside most
The
lane?
inside, yes, ma'am.
Okay, sir. And on that evening, are you familiar with that intersection from
Yes, ma'am.
traveling it before?
Yes, ma'am.
How would you describe the traffic at that intersection on that evening?
If I recall, it was not busy at all. I'm pretty sure I was the only car there.
Were your windows up or down?
They're up.
What were the weather conditions?
It was a little chilly. It was normal, though.
What were the lighting conditions?
Street lights, Walgreens, the gate station lights.
Outside of the normal traffic noise, was there any other loud noise such as a car alarm or store alarm going off at that time?
Not that I recall, no, ma'am.
What was the noise level inside of your own car?
Casual conversation.
Did you stop for that light?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you hear while waiting to turn left?
We heard gunfire. One of the teenagers actually commented, thought it was fireworks.
Did you recognize it to be gunshots?
Yes, ma'am.
How did you recognize it?
I've heard gunshots before. I've gone to a range a few times, and I recognized it as such.
Did you hear more than one shot?
Yes, probably more than 5, less than 10.
What did you do?
We made a U-turn after noticing the gunshots to go and see what was going on.
From where you were seated in the driver's side on that inside lane, could you tell from what direction those shots were coming?
I had a pretty good idea. I could hear that they were coming from the right side of the vicinity. So
And what is on that right side of that
the gate
intersection?
station.
All right, let me show you State's Exhibit 3 in evidence. And can you show the jurors on this aerial how you returned from where you were originally stopped and heard the gunshots and returned to the entrance to the gate station? Approximately how long did it take you to do that?
Maybe a minute.
So from the time you heard the first shot to the time you pulled back into the gate station, you estimate it was a minute?
Probably about a minute, minute and a half by the time I pulled in.
Is that gas station in Jacksonville, Duval County, Florida?
Yes, ma'am.
Where specifically did you pull in at the gate station?
As soon as you come in, there's two sections of gas pumps. I pulled into the first section to the left.
Why did you go in there?
I don't know. I heard something. I wanted to help out if possible.
Where did you specifically park? Okay, thank you. And did you go inside the station itself at that point, inside the store area?
No, ma'am.
Did you notice a red SUV?
Yes, ma'am.
How quickly from the time you pulled into that gate gas station did you notice a red SUV?
Immediately.
Do you know what kind of an SUV it was?
If I remember correctly, it was a Dodge Durango.
What brought your attention to that vehicle specifically?
It was backing up.
Okay. And could you tell that anything was wrong with the vehicle itself?
If I recall correctly, it looked like there was holes in it, gunshots. I can't remember if a glass was broken or not, but I just remember my attention being to it.
What was it about the red SUV and its occupants that made you believe they needed your assistance?
As soon as they pulled into the parking spot, one got out and was very distraught.
Okay. Did you know any of the occupants that you ultimately saw in that vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Could you tell why he was distraught?
No.
Did you see a weapon on that young man?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever see any weapons anywhere near that vehicle or near those occupants?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever see any of the occupants walk over to any bushes?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever see them try to hide anything?
No, ma'am.
What did you do when you saw the distraught young man?
I told my wife and the teenagers to stay in the car. I got out and approached the vehicle to see what was going on.
Did you attempt to render aid? Did you determine that someone within that vehicle had been shot?
Yes, I came up to the passenger side, and there's a young man in the back holding another young man, saying he's not moving.
Were they together on the back seat?
Yeah, one was holding the other. He was kind of hunched together.
And from what side did you approach the Durango? Passenger
The
or
passenger.
driver? Passenger side?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you attempt to render aid to the young man through the passenger side?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did that work?
I checked for a pulse. I didn't want to do too much until authorities had gotten on the scene.
Okay. At some point, did you help get that young man out on the ground, the young
Yes,
man who
ma'am.
had been shot? Did you know him at all?
No, ma'am.
What training did you have to try to help in a situation like that?
When I was 16, I did junior lifeguarding, which they teach you normal CPR, just, put pressure on it, normal aid.
We're going to show you a photo marked into evidence as State's Exhibit 8. And I ask you, sir, is that the Dodge Durango in the position in which you first approached it to help?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you first approach, can you just draw you can draw on that by touching it, just draw on there where you first approached the vehicle. And realizing that you're going to be putting a mark through sort of the back windshield, where did you see the two young men huddled in the back seat? At some point, did you assist in pulling the young man who had been shot out of that car?
Yes, ma'am.
Show the jurors where you did that.
If I remember correct. No, we might have done it on this side.
To actually pull him out?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you see the area on the ground where there were some things left
Yes,
after
ma'am.
having him there? Now, obviously, the young man had been removed by rescue at this point, is that correct?
No, ma'am.
No, I'm in where the picture's taken.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay, now, you got him on the ground, and who was with you helping you try to render aid?
Police officers.
Okay, were there any rescue people there at that point?
No, ma'am.
What did you do when police and rescue got there?
When police got there, I went up to the officer. After I checked for a pulse, I noticed that a police officer had pulled up. I went up to him and I said, "Hey, I don't feel a pulse. Can I have a pair of gloves to where I can open the door and assess what's going on?" And he said, "Yeah." Opened his trunk, gave me a pair of gloves. I went over there, checked on it. I, again, didn't feel a pulse. Went back to him, let him know, and that's when some more officers had come on scene.
And about how long did it take for Jack's Fire and Rescue to get there?
If I remember correctly, it was anywhere from like 3 to 5 minutes. I mean, we had enough time to check for pulses and start pulling them out before they had gotten there.
At any point while you were in that parking lot rendering aid to the young man who had been shot, did you ever see a black sedan pull back in?
No, ma'am.
Did you remain at the scene with other witnesses and speak to the police?
Yes, ma'am.
We have just a moment with co-counsel.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Guy? Okay. I want you to hit the screen because it erases that line. Okay. Can you go to the aerial that shows the pumps, the gas pumps? Is it 10? Well, go to the closer aerial, maybe number 2. It's not quite as close. Show the jurors where you actually parked on that. Right there. And then going back to the last photo, please. Then that was States 2. Now, when you got out of your vehicle, did you make a straight line toward the red Durango?
Pretty much, yes, ma'am.
And what made you do that? What made you go towards that car as opposed to, for example, the white truck that's depicted?
A young man had gotten out and was just upset. I could hear upsetness coming from the vehicle. Someone was yelling, "He's not moving, he's not moving, he's not moving."
Excited utterance, Your Honor.
It's overruled.
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your answer.
He was just saying they're upset.
Okay, so when you approached, sort of do your walking path as you approached from your car to this car. Okay. And you looked in, and at that point, you could tell someone was hurt.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, I mean, at that point, I saw holes in the car, so I knew something was probably wrong.
All right. And then you said the rest of the activity pertaining to the young man who had been shot occurred where?
On the opposite side of the vehicle, if my memory.
Just draw a circle to distinguish between that. All right. That's all I have for this witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Hanania?
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams. Sir, you've testified that you were on Bay Meadows Road at the time that you heard these shots, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you weren't in the gas station at the time that the shots were fired.
No, ma'am.
And you were not at the gas station at the time that whatever events led up to the shots being fired happened, correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So you can't say anything at this time about the behavior of anyone in the red Durango before the shots were fired. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said that you didn't know any of the people in the red Durango on that evening. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, since then, you've had quite a bit of contact with these people. Is that right?
A small amount. I wouldn't say a large amount. I know I sought out the family on Facebook to try to give my condolences, and I went to the memorial service.
And you had contact with some of the members of the family and some of the other occupants of the car on Facebook and other things like that. Is that right, sir?
Only through, I never got responses on Facebook. Only through the memorial service did I actually get any contact through them.
Now, so on that evening, you didn't see the SUV pull away.
No, ma'am.
Okay. And you didn't see where it had stopped, correct?
No, ma'am. I only saw it coming back.
You saw it coming back. So you don't know how far down into this other plaza it went to. Is that right?
No, ma'am.
That's not right?
Oh, no, ma'am. As in, I don't know.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure that the record was clear on that. So at the time that you pull into the gas station, it's almost back. Are you saying it's almost back in the parking spot?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's probably I'd say about 100 to 150 feet away from the spot. I mean, I can see it pretty well backing up.
All right. So at the time that it's still that far away, 100 to 150 feet at the time that you pull into the gas station. Okay. And obviously, that also means that you didn't see whether or not anyone within the SUV got out of the SUV when it pulled out into that other plaza. Is that right, sir?
My knowledge of the SUV is it backing up and then pulling into that spot.
Okay. So you can't say what they did or didn't do when they were in that other plaza. Is that right?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, sir, the other plaza that we're talking about, if this is connected to the gas station parking lot, is that right?
There is an access point to the gate gas station.
Okay. So there's an exit that you can take from the gate gas station directly back onto Southside Boulevard, is that right?
Yes,
Okay. But if you go past that, you can then drive into this other plaza, is that right?
I believe so.
Okay. And there's a Starbucks there, there's a loop there.
Yes, I know there's a loop there.
There's a
I don't know
whole
about Starbucks.
strip of businesses.
Correct.
In this other plaza, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And some of those businesses are like restaurants and places that stay open past 5 or 6 o'clock. Is that right?
I would assume so.
Okay. And so this other plaza, you've been in it? You've seen that area?
I've gone to the loop once or twice.
So you're aware of the fact that there are trees within the parking lot? Is that right, sir?
I think there's like medians where there's like zoned out different sections where there's like little bushes.
Okay, so there's bushes within the medians.
I think so, if I
Okay.
recall correctly.
And there's actually a ditch.
Objection, it's all outside the scope of this testimony, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Now, sir, when you come back, when you drive into the gate gas station, sir, you see this car coming back and you make a beeline for it, is that right?
After it pulls into the spot and I see that there's some distraught going on, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you were asked about whether or not you ever saw any weapons there around the Durango, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you ever part of a search for any weapons?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did the police ever kind of commandeer you into going out and looking to see if there was a weapon to be found?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when you get to the Durango and you see this wounded person, you and the officer help to take him out. Is that right?
That's not at first. That's further down the line.
Okay. So you check for a pulse, then you go to the officer, you get gloves. I understand all that.
Okay, I didn't want to.
No, that's all right. Now, when you go to the officer and you ask for the gloves, does he ask you if you're here, if you're like a medical doctor, if you're official capacity?
Not that I recall. If I remember correctly, I had stated that I had some CPR training that I'd just like to check for a pulse.
Okay. And he didn't ask you for any other information other than that?
Not that I recall, no, ma'am.
And at the time that this is all going on, there is an officer there, but the scene hasn't been secured. Is that right?
Right at first, yes, ma'am.
And you know what I mean by secured. It's one of these situations where you see the police tape blocking
Probably-
off an area.
Probably, I would say within 3 to 5 minutes. That was because I remember them having to lift the tape to let rescue come in.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
So 3 to 5 minutes after the time that you got there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And once you had gotten the gloves and you and the officer went back and he's helped you out, you're at that point concentrating on the person that you're trying to help. Is that right?
I would say my attention's to him, yes, ma'am.
Okay. You'd never been in this kind of situation before. Is that right?
Not to this degree, no, ma'am.
Okay. So you're looking down at that person. You're trying to help him. Is that right?
Correct?
You're seeing if you can do something to save his life. Is that right?
Correct?
Now, you were asked about this vehicle that you saw leaving. You don't know whose vehicle that was. Is that right, sir?
No.
Okay. And you never went into that other lot where the plaza was. Is that correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And when you were giving your estimations when you're giving your estimations about how much time things took, like 3 to 5 minutes for the scene to be secured, or, how much time it took you to turn around, what you're giving us is your best guess as to the amount of time.
My
So-
best estimation from what I
Sure.
recall, yes, ma'am.
Okay, you're not checking your watch and taking notes as to when things happen or anything like that.
No, ma'am, but I would also say I know that area quite well, so.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Ms. Corey,
Nothing further, Your Honor.
may he be excused?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Hanania, may he be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir, you're excused. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll take a little afternoon break. It's almost 10 after 2. So we'll take a break until 2:25 and we'll resume then. Please, I'm gonna say this a million times, and you've heard me say it already. Do not discuss the case among yourselves. Don't let anybody discuss the case in your presence or try and approach you about the case. You can leave your notes there if you'd like. I think we have some, drinks and snacks in the jury room, but if you need some other form of break, then the bailiffs will help you with that. And we'll see you back at 2:25.